In terms of time for this training, the training would be of short duration, as this is an event based on strength and power and not duration and stamina. To develop power, for example, the athlete might practice block starts, sprinting with resistance, parachute or sled pulls. These would be at 90 to 95% maximum effort with a 3 to 6 minute recovery. To develop anaerobic capacity, for example, might be a pyramid set of 80 to 100, 100 to 120, 120 to 100, and then that to 80 at 95% with 6 to 8 minutes of recovery. In terms of the type of training, a maximum of a mixture of training types would be effective in developing anaerobic stamina and strength. Running drills and techniques to develop speed, anaerobic capacity, power and acceleration. Intense but short duration HIIT, plyometrics and weights to develop explosive power, strength and anaerobic adaptations in the muscles. The overall purpose of aerobic training and exercise is to enable the body to adapt so that it can improve its VO2 max, which is the amount of oxygen that the body can take in, utilise and turn into energy in a space of a minute. This is important. This is an important physiological measurement, as it provides a reading that can be used to gauge how long in duration and how hard in duration an athlete can train for or perform for. The overall purpose of anaerobic training and exercise is to help build tolerance to the lactic acid that causes fatigue and improve muscle endurance and muscle length. Adaptation changes to the muscles help to increase the amount of energy available, which allows them to act more quickly and powerfully when recruited for a specific activity or exercise. As you can see in the Venn diagram on the page, here are the different factors of aerobic and anaerobic exercises, and the factors which they involve and the similarities. And then here's a graph which shows that at the beginning anaerobic respiration is at a very peak, and it shows it's at 100% energy supplied, as there might not be not enough oxygen in the muscles. However, there is a slow but rapid increase in aerobic respiration as the oxygen levels increase in the time of running at the full speed, and therefore that remains higher. This slide is about aerobic and anaerobic adaptations in the cardiovascular respiratory system. The main adaptations to the cardiovascular system relate to the amount of oxygen that can be delivered to the muscles during exercise. Through aerobic exercise, the athlete's heart muscle grows and the left ventricle becomes much thicker than that of non-athletes. This adaptation is called cardiac hypertrophy, and it's a thickening and strengthening of the heart wall. This means that the heart stroke volume, which is the amount of blood pumped by one contraction, improves, and the heart's cardiac output, which is the volume of blood pumped, increases. This overall adaptation and physiological impact is that the heart doesn't have to beat as often, and as a consequence, there is a decrease in the overall heart rate. This is called bradycardia, and the resting heart rate of a fit and athletic person is around 40 to 45 beats per minute, compared to an average male adult of 70 beats per minute. A reduced heart rate also has an impact on the submaximal heart rate, and in a fitter athlete, this would decrease when compared to another less fit athlete competing a similar event or type of exercise. There is no impact on the maximal heart rate, as this is an age related measurement. Another cardiovascular adaptation is the increased amount of capillaries, which are the smallest blood vessels of the body, that are produced. They're around like the muscles, so they're like a delivery site of oxygen, and this is known as capillarization. These tiny vessels help to carry oxygenated red blood cells to the muscles to improve overall aerobic endurance. Aerobic training also induces adaptations in the vascular system that pumps the blood around the body. A stronger heart's cardiac output means that it doesn't have to pump as often, and therefore the force on the arteries decrease. This in turn lowers a person's overall blood pressure. The amount of hemoglobin, the protein which is found in red blood cells that carries and binds to the oxygen, increases through aerobic exercise. As a consequence of this, more blood and therefore more energy is delivered to the muscles during exercise, as the oxygen goes into the mitochondria, and therefore it produces ATP, causing it to contract. At the same time, there is a reduction in hematocrit. Which is the ratio of red blood cells to blood plasma, and this makes the blood less thick, which is the viscosity, and as a consequence, its rate flow increases. Overall, more blood flow to their muscles, increased energy, and improved cardiovascular endurance. Regular exercise also reduces the potential impacts of cardiovascular disease. These include conditions such as coronary artery disease, which is the thickening of the arteries, causing less blood to be able to pump through, strokes, heart attacks, and high blood pressure. As you can see on this page, the normal heart and then the left ventricle hypertrophy, so there's a thicker wall, and so there's less blood. And on the graphs you can see that with maximal exercise there is a higher heart rate, however during submaximal exercise the heart rate is lower. And you can see in the graph to the top right that as the power increases, so the exercise intensity, the cardiac output also increases, and then it sort of lowers off slightly as it gets to the top. Now for the respiratory system adaptations to anaerobic and aerobic exercise. The respiratory system is responsible for the intake of oxygen in to the body and the removal of waste products such as carbon dioxide. Aerobic training adaptations improve the intake of oxygen and therefore exercise related performance. Through training exercises such as circuits and HIIT training, the muscle responsible for respiration, such as the diaphragm, rib cage, and abdominal muscles, can be strengthened. This enables the lungs to inhale more air as the diaphragm goes flat, increasing the volume. The muscles relax, and therefore there's a high volume for the air to go in, and forcibly exhale as the diaphragm flips up, decreasing the volume and increasing the pressure, and the muscles contract and it sort of squeezes it out, and therefore it reduces carbon dioxide buildup in the blood as it goes out. This in turn increases the volume of lung capacity and the amount of air that can be breathed in with each breath, known as the tidal volume, and the amount of air that can be breathed in per minute, known as the minimum ventilation. Overall, the increased volume of air improves aerobic capacity and the ability of the heart, lungs, and muscles to work together, and this is called the VO2 max. Adaptations in the lungs promote the increased use of alveoli, which exchanges oxygen and carbon dioxide in the bloodstream. This adaptation improves oxygen uptake by the muscles and overall aerobic capacity and athlete performance. Through training, and especially exercise such as HIIT training, an athlete's ability to recover from exercise is developed. This enables the athlete to exercise for a longer period of time without fatiguing as quickly, and is therefore able to make improvements in performance. A strong respiratory system reduces the chance of developing respiratory diseases such as bronchitis, pneumonia, chest infections, and COPD, which stands for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and can improve underlying conditions such as asthma. These graphs here show that as the exercise goes on, the ventilation increases as there is a higher demand for oxygen to the muscles, which can be transported from a faster breathing rate. To summarise this, the overall adaptations is ventilation, which is minimum volume, breathing rate submaximal, respiratory muscle strength and economy, and lung volumes at rest and maximality, and oxygen and CO2 diffusion rates. Now talking about neuromuscular system adaptations when in anaerobic exercise. Hypertrophy is an increase and growth of the muscle cells and an increase in muscular size achieved through exercise. The most common way to improve strength is through lifting weights. There are two types of hypertrophy which train muscles for different functions. Myofibrillar is the growth of the muscle contraction points and is typically for strength and speed. This is the type of muscle a 100-meter sprinter or short distance 50 to 100-meter swimmer would aim to develop. The other type is sarcoplasmic, and this develops increased muscle glycogen storage. This is the type of muscle that a cyclist, endurance runner, or triathlete would focus on developing. Tendon strength needs to develop in athletes if the aim is to become stronger. Their tendons are made from collagen and they connect the muscles to the other moving joints. However, tendons receive less blood flow than muscles. Plyometrics an exercise routine that uses explosive movements, and it is a recognised way of improving tendon strength. This might include squat jumps, drop jumps, but burpees, lunges, and press ups, for example. Hypertrophy also develops muscle force and the maximum force a muscle can exert. Sprinters, footballers, rugby players need to develop this muscle force for a quick acceleration. Motor unit recruitment improves and makes sure the muscles are able to function in a more controlled and coordinated way. There is an increased activation of muscles that produce strength, power, speed, and hypertrophy. HIIT exercises, circuits and sprints, and others also develop the muscles' reaction time. This is beneficial in sports such as hockey, rugby, or football, where players have to quickly change direction or go from standing or slow start to a sprint to reach a stationary on the pitch, a situation on the pitch.